The alley echoed with the cruel laughter of bullies as a young boy, clutching his torn backpack, stumbled against the brick wall. "What's the matter, scared?" one of the older boys taunted, his voice sharp and mocking. Tears welled up in the boy's eyes, but he refused to let them fall. Just as another shove came his way, a deep, gravelly voice cut through the tension. "That's enough." The bullies froze, turning to see a disheveled man with weathered skin and piercing eyes step out of the shadows. His presence was imposing, and his words carried a weight that silenced the chaos. Marcus Tanner wasn't always invisible. Once he had a life that others envied, a stable job, a loving family, and a modest home filled with warmth. But life has a way of unraveling even the best-laid plans, and for Marcus, it unraveled quickly. At 52, Marcus found himself living on the streets, the world around him moving too fast to notice the man he had become. His once proud shoulders now sagged under the weight of life's burdens, and his hands, once calloused from years of honest labor, were now rough from braving cold nights on park benches. But behind his weathered exterior lay a man of quiet strength and resilience, a man determined to hold on to his dignity despite everything he had lost. Marcus grew up in a small town in the Midwest, the son of a factory worker and a nurse. His parents worked tirelessly to provide for their family, teaching Marcus and his siblings the value of hard work and kindness. "Never turn your back on someone in need," his mother used to say, a lesson that stuck with Marcus long after he left home. In his 20s, Marcus moved to the city, full of ambition and hope. He found work as a mechanic, a trade he loved for its hands-on nature and the satisfaction of fixing something broken. He married young, falling in love with a woman named Sarah whose laugh could light up any room. Together they built a life, raising their daughter Clara with all the love they could muster. But life has a way of testing even the strongest foundations. When Clara was diagnosed with a rare illness at the age of 10, Marcus and Sarah threw everything they had into her treatment. The medical bills piled up, and Marcus worked long hours, taking on extra shifts to make ends meet. Despite their efforts, Clara's condition worsened and she passed away 2 years later. Her death left a gaping hole in their lives, one that Marcus and Sarah struggled to fill. Grief has a way of fracturing even the strongest bonds. Marcus and Sarah tried to hold on to each other, but the weight of their loss was too much to bear. Their once happy home became a place of silence and sadness, and eventually they drifted apart. Sarah moved away to start fresh, while Marcus stayed behind, clinging to the remnants of the life they had built. The years that followed were a blur of challenges. Marcus lost his job when the auto shop he worked for shut down, and finding new work became nearly impossible as the economy took a downturn. With no family nearby and no savings to fall back on, Marcus was evicted from his apartment. The man who had once been a provider and protector now found himself sleeping in shelters and scrounging for meals. Despite everything, Marcus refused to let bitterness take root in his heart. He still held on to the values his parents had instilled in him, to treat others with kindness, no matter the circumstances. He often helped other homeless individuals, sharing what little he had and offering a listening ear. "We're all in this together," he would say, his voice steady despite the uncertainty of his own future. Marcus spent most of his days in the city park, where he felt a semblance of peace among the trees and the sounds of children playing. He had grown used to being overlooked, a part of the background that most people ignored. But he noticed everything: the businessman rushing to catch a cab, the young couple arguing on a park bench, the elderly woman feeding the pigeons. The world moved on, oblivious to the man who had once been a part of it. What people didn't see was the quiet strength that Marcus carried. They didn't see the man who had survived unimaginable loss, who had weathered life's storms with a resilience few could understand. They didn't see the heart of a man who still believed in the goodness of people, even when the world had shown him its harshest side. Marcus often thought about Clara, her laughter echoing in his memories. She had been the light of his life, her smile a beacon of hope even in the darkest times. When he felt himself sinking into despair, he would think of her and the promise he had made to her before she passed, to keep going, no matter what. "You're stronger than you think, Dad," she had said, her voice soft but sure. Those words became his mantra, a reminder to keep putting one foot in front of the other. It was a quiet morning in the park when Marcus first noticed the young boy. He was sitting alone on a bench, his head bowed as he clutched his backpack tightly to his chest. Something about the boy's demeanor struck Marcus. There was a sadness in his posture, a vulnerability that felt all too familiar. Marcus didn't approach him right away. He knew better than to intrude on someone's space, but he kept an eye on him, his instincts telling him that the boy needed someone to notice. Days passed, and Marcus saw the boy again, this time standing near the playground, watching the other children play but not joining in. It was clear he didn't feel like he belonged. Marcus recognized that feeling all too well. He wanted to help, but he wasn't sure how. What could a man like him, someone who had lost so much, offer to a boy he didn't even know? That question lingered in Marcus's mind as he went about his days. He couldn't shake the image of the boy, his small figure weighed down by an invisible burden. And then, one afternoon, Marcus's instincts were proven right. As he sat on a bench reading an old paperback, he heard shouting nearby. Looking up, he saw the boy surrounded by a group of older kids, their voices mocking and cruel. The boy's face was pale, his body trembling as he tried to back away. Without a second thought, Marcus stood up, his legs moving before his mind had a chance to catch up. He didn't know what he would do or say, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't stand by and do nothing. The boy needed someone to stand up for him, and Marcus Tanner wasn't about to let him face the bullies alone. Marcus didn't hesitate as he approached the group of bullies surrounding the young boy. The scene felt all too familiar. A vulnerable child facing cruelty while everyone else pretended not to see. His voice cut through the mocking laughter like a blade. "That's enough," he said, his tone firm but calm. The bullies turned to face him, their sneers faltering as they took in Marcus's imposing figure. His weathered face and worn clothes might have marked him as a man down on his luck, but his presence carried a quiet authority that made them pause. "You don't want to do this," he added, his eyes locking with the ringleaders. "Walk away." For a moment, the group hesitated, exchanging glances. Then, with a shrug of indifference, the leader muttered, "Whatever, old man," and motioned for the others to follow. They slinked off, their bravado crumbling under Marcus's steady gaze. Marcus turned to the boy, who was still clutching his backpack as though it were a shield. His eyes were wide with a mix of fear and relief. "You okay, kid?" Marcus asked, his voice softening. The boy nodded, but didn't speak, his small hands trembling. Marcus crouched down to his level, offering a reassuring smile. "They're gone. You're safe now." The boy finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you." His words carried a weight that hit Marcus harder than he expected. He had done something simple, stood up for a child, but the gratitude in the boy's eyes made it feel monumental. "What's your name?" Marcus asked gently. "Elliot," the boy replied, his voice steadier now. "Elliot Carter." Marcus extended a hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Elliot shook it. "Nice to meet you, Elliot," Marcus said. "You're brave, you know that? Standing up to those kids like that." Elliot's eyes dropped to the ground. "I didn't feel brave." "Sometimes bravery doesn't feel like bravery when you're in the middle of it," Marcus said. "But trust me, you've got it in you." The two sat on the bench for a while, Marcus letting Elliot gather himself. The boy's small frame seemed weighed down by more than just the incident with the bullies. Marcus could see it in the way he kept his head down, the way his shoulders sagged. "You want to tell me what's going on?" Marcus asked, his voice careful. Elliot hesitated, then nodded. "It's not just them," he said quietly. "They've been picking on me for weeks. They say I don't belong here, that I don't deserve to go to this school." Marcus felt a pang in his chest. He knew what it was like to feel out of place, to have others try to make you smaller than you were. "Why would they say that?" he asked. Elliot hesitated again before answering. "Because of my dad. He's important, and I guess some people don't like that." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Important how?" Elliot shifted uncomfortably. "He's the CEO of a big company, Carter Enterprises. People at school say I'm only here because of him, that I don't deserve the things I have." Marcus nodded slowly, piecing together the picture. The boy wasn't just dealing with ordinary bullies. He was caught in the crossfire of envy and privilege, struggling to find his place in a world that judged him before knowing him. "Listen, kid," Marcus said, leaning forward. "You can't let people like that define you. What they think doesn't matter. What matters is how you see yourself." Elliot looked up at him, his eyes searching Marcus's face for answers. "How do you do that? How do you not let it get to you?" Marcus hesitated. He wasn't sure how to answer that. The truth was, he struggled with the same question every day. How did he keep going when the world seemed determined to ignore him? How did he hold on to his sense of worth when life had taken so much from him? "I don't have all the answers," Marcus admitted, "but I know this. Every time you stand up for yourself, every time you remind yourself that you matter, you get a little stronger. It's not easy, but it's worth it." Elliot nodded, his expression thoughtful. For the first time, Marcus saw a flicker of hope in the boy's eyes. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus walked Elliot to the edge of the park, making sure he was safely on his way home. "Thanks again," Elliot said, looking up at him. "I don't think I'll forget this." Marcus smiled, his heart warming at the boy's sincerity. "Anytime, kid. Remember, you're stronger than you think." Elliot waved as he walked away, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts. He sat on the park bench, the weight of the day settling over him. Helping Elliot had felt good, right even, but it also stirred something deeper in him. It reminded him of all the times he had felt helpless, of the people who had walked past him without a second glance. It reminded him of Clara and the promises he had made to her. That night, Marcus lay awake under the stars, his makeshift bed of cardboard and old blankets offering little comfort. His mind was restless, replaying the events of the day. He wondered what kind of life Elliot had, what kind of man his father was. The name Carter Enterprises rang a bell, but Marcus couldn't place it. All he knew was that the boy had touched something in him, a reminder of who he used to be and who he still wanted to be. The next day, as Marcus sat in his usual spot in the park, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. He watched curiously as the driver stepped out and opened the back door. To his surprise, Elliot emerged, his face lighting up when he saw Marcus. "Hi," he called out, running over to him. Marcus smiled, though he was confused. "Hey, Elliot. What's going on?" Before Elliot could answer, a tall, sharply dressed man stepped out of the car. His presence was commanding, his tailored suit and polished demeanor radiating power. He approached Marcus with an outstretched hand. "Mr. Tanner, I presume?" Marcus hesitated, then shook his hand. "Yeah? And you are?" "Jonathan Carter," the man said, his voice firm but warm. "Elliot's father." Jonathan Carter's handshake was firm, his expression unreadable as he studied Marcus. Behind him, Elliot hovered nervously, glancing between the two men. Marcus, still taken aback by the man's sudden appearance, nodded politely. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Carter," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the unusual circumstances. Jonathan motioned toward the bench. "Do you mind if we sit for a moment?" Marcus gestured for him to take a seat, unsure of what to expect. As Jonathan sat beside him, Elliot remained standing, fidgeting with the strap of his backpack. The moment felt heavy, filled with unspoken words. Finally, Jonathan broke the silence. "My son told me what happened yesterday," he began, his tone calm but tinged with seriousness. "About how you stepped in when those boys were harassing him." Marcus nodded, his expression softening as he glanced at Elliot. He didn't deserve that. No one does. Jonathan's lips pressed into a thin line. "You're right, and I want to thank you for what you did. It takes a lot of courage to stand up for someone, especially when the world hasn't been kind to you." The comment caught Marcus off guard. It wasn't often that people acknowledged his struggles so openly. He shifted uncomfortably but managed a small smile. "I just did what anyone should do." Jonathan nodded thoughtfully, his gaze drifting to the park. "That's the thing, though. Not everyone would. Most people would have walked away." The conversation paused, the weight of Jonathan's words settling over them. Marcus glanced at Elliot, who gave him a shy smile. There was something in the boy's eyes, a mix of gratitude and admiration, that tugged at Marcus's heart. After a moment, Jonathan turned back to Marcus. "I'd like to repay you for what you've done. Is there anything you need? Anything I can do to help?" Marcus hesitated, his pride battling with the reality of his situation. He didn't want charity, but he couldn't deny that his life was far from easy. "I appreciate the offer," he said carefully, "but I didn't help Elliot expecting anything in return." Jonathan studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I respect that, but if you change your mind, please let me know." Elliot stepped forward, his voice breaking the tension. "Dad, maybe Marcus could come over for dinner. You always say we should thank people properly." Jonathan raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by his son's suggestion. "That's not a bad idea, Elliot." Marcus smiled at the boy's earnestness. "I wouldn't want to impose." "It's not an imposition," Jonathan said firmly. "You've already done so much for my son. Let us do something for you." Despite his initial reluctance, Marcus found himself agreeing. The thought of a warm meal and a moment of normalcy was too tempting to resist. Jonathan gave him an address and a time, promising to send a car to pick him up. As the Carter family left the park, Marcus couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope, a small light in the darkness of his circumstances. That evening, Marcus arrived at the Carter home, a sprawling estate that felt worlds away from the park benches he called home. The driver opened the car door for him, and Marcus stepped out, his worn boots crunching on the pristine gravel driveway. He adjusted his jacket nervously, feeling out of place but determined to make the most of the opportunity. Elliot greeted him at the door, his face lighting up with excitement. "You made it! Come on in!" The inside of the house was just as impressive as the exterior. High ceilings, polished wood floors, and artwork lining the walls. Jonathan and his wife, Catherine, welcomed Marcus warmly, their hospitality putting him at ease. Over dinner, the conversation flowed easily. Catherine, a kind and articulate woman, asked Marcus about his life, genuinely interested in his story. Marcus spoke openly, sharing bits of his past, but avoiding the more painful details. He talked about his work as a mechanic, his love for fixing things, and the lessons his parents had taught him. Jonathan listened intently, occasionally nodding or asking questions. Elliot chimed in enthusiastically, clearly thrilled to have Marcus there. As the evening went on, Marcus began to feel more comfortable. The warmth of the Carter family reminded him of what he had lost, but also what he still hoped to find. For the first time in years, he felt like he belonged. The next few weeks brought unexpected changes to Marcus's life. Jonathan, true to his word, found ways to help without making Marcus feel like a charity case. He offered him a part-time job at one of his company's garages, where Marcus could put his mechanical skills to use. The work was steady, and the income gave Marcus a chance to regain some stability. Elliot often stopped by the garage after school, eager to learn from Marcus. The two developed a bond, their conversations ranging from cars to life lessons. Marcus found himself growing fond of the boy, seeing in him a spark of curiosity and resilience that reminded him of his younger self. But life wasn't without its setbacks. One afternoon, while Marcus was working at the garage, he overheard two employees talking about him. Their words were laced with skepticism, questioning why Jonathan Carter would go out of his way to help someone like him. The sting of their judgment hit Marcus hard, reopening old wounds of feeling invisible and unworthy. Instead of confronting them, Marcus threw himself into his work, determined to prove them wrong. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was no stranger to challenges. With each passing day, he grew more confident in his abilities and more certain of his place in the world. The bond between Marcus and the Carter family deepened. Jonathan often invited Marcus over for dinner, where they discussed everything from cars to philosophy. Catherine shared stories about her work with local charities, inspiring Marcus to think about how he could give back to the community. Elliot, too, continued to look up to Marcus, often seeking his advice. "How do you stay so strong?" he asked one day as they worked on a car together. Marcus paused, wiping his hands on a rag. "It's not about never feeling weak," he said. "It's about choosing to keep going, even when it's hard." Elliot nodded, his admiration for Marcus growing with each passing day. As the weeks turned into months, Marcus began to feel a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. The support of the Carter family had given him a foundation to rebuild his life, but it was his own determination that carried him forward. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was living. Still, Marcus knew that the real test was yet to come. The shadows of his past and the weight of his circumstances were never far away. But for the first time, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The rising action of his journey had set the stage for a moment of transformation, one that would prove just how far he had come. Marcus had spent months rebuilding his life, with steady work at the garage and the unwavering support of the Carter family. He had grown closer to Elliot, becoming not just a mentor, but a trusted friend. Yet despite the progress he had made, Marcus couldn't shake the lingering insecurities about his place in their world. He often questioned whether he truly belonged in their circle or if he was just another charitable act for a wealthy family. The tension came to a head one afternoon when Marcus was working late at the garage. Elliot had been helping him with a car, his eager questions filling the otherwise quiet space. They were interrupted by the sudden arrival of two men in suits, their demeanor sharp and authoritative. Marcus immediately recognized them as Jonathan's business associates, men he had seen at Carter Enterprises but had never spoken to directly. The men approached, their eyes scanning Marcus with thinly veiled judgment. "So, you're the one Jonathan's been talking about?" one of them said, his tone laced with condescension. "The homeless mechanic he's taken under his wing." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He straightened, wiping his hands on a rag to buy himself a moment to think. "I'm Marcus Tanner," he said firmly, extending a hand. "And yes, I work here." The men exchanged a glance but didn't take his hand. Instead, the second man spoke, his voice dripping with skepticism. "We've heard a lot about you. Jonathan seems to think you're some kind of project worth investing in. We're just curious. What exactly makes you so special?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus felt the weight of their words, the familiar sting of being dismissed and judged without merit. He could feel Elliot watching, his young face filled with a mix of confusion and concern. "I'm not a project," Marcus said, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. I'm a man who's been through tough times, but I've never stopped trying to move forward. Jonathan gave me an opportunity, but I'm here because I earned it, not because I need anyone's pity. The first man smirked, crossing his arms. Is that so? Because from where we're standing, it looks like you're riding on someone else's goodwill. Before Marcus could respond, Elliot stepped forward, his small voice cutting through the tension. That's not true, he said, his hands clenched into fists. Marcus is the hardest working person I know. He helped me when no one else would. You don't even know him. The men glanced at Elliot, clearly caught off guard by his outburst. Marcus placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, his touch reassuring. It's okay, Elliot, he said softly. Then, turning back to the men, he added, You don't have to understand my story, but you will respect the work I do here. The room fell silent, the tension thick as Marcus stood his ground. The men exchanged another glance before one of them scoffed and muttered, We'll see how long this lasts, as they turned to leave. That evening, Marcus sat outside the garage, the confrontation replaying in his mind. He had faced judgment before, but something about this encounter felt different. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about Elliot, Jonathan, and the people who had come to believe in him. He couldn't let their faith in him be shaken by the narrow-minded opinions of a few. The opportunity to prove himself came sooner than he expected. The following week, during a major company event at Carter Enterprises, Marcus was invited to showcase his work. Jonathan had arranged for a presentation of the garage's recent projects, emphasizing the value Marcus had brought to the team. The event was attended by influential figures, including the same men who had doubted him. Marcus prepared meticulously, determined to show not just his technical skills, but the depth of his character. When the day arrived, he stood in front of the crowd, a mix of nervousness and resolve coursing through him. Elliot was in the front row, his presence a steadying force. Good evening, Marcus began, his voice clear and steady. I'm Marcus Tanner, and I've been working at the Carter Enterprises garage for the past 6 months. Today, I want to share not just what we've accomplished, but why it matters. He spoke about the importance of perseverance, of finding purpose in work even when life seemed to strip everything else away. He shared his journey, not as a sob story, but as a testament to resilience and the power of second chances. As he spoke, he noticed the shift in the room. The skeptical glances softened, replaced by nods of understanding. Even the men who had confronted him at the garage seemed to be listening intently, their expressions unreadable but less hostile. When Marcus finished, the room erupted into applause. Jonathan approached him, a proud smile on his face. You've done something incredible today, Marcus, he said. You've shown everyone what I've known all along, that you're more than capable. Elliot rushed up to him, beaming with pride. I told you they'd see how amazing you are, he said, wrapping Marcus in a tight hug. For the first time in years, Marcus felt a deep sense of accomplishment, not just for himself, but for the impact he had made on others. He had faced his fears, stood up to his critics, and proven his worth in a way that no one could deny. In the days that followed, Marcus's life continued to change. He was offered a full-time position at the garage, along with a small apartment nearby, giving him a place to call home. The doubts that had haunted him began to fade, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. The men who had once dismissed him now treated him with respect, their earlier judgments replaced by acknowledgement of his contributions. And while Marcus didn't need their approval to validate his journey, it was a reminder that people's perceptions could change when given the chance to see beyond the surface. Most importantly, his bond with Elliot and the Carter family grew even stronger. Marcus had found not just a job, but a community, a family that believed in him and reminded him of his own worth. Marcus sat on the bench in the small park near his new apartment, the late afternoon sun casting a warm glow over the quiet scene. It had been months since he first stepped in to help Elliot, and life had changed in ways he hadn't imagined. The once daunting challenges that weighed him down now felt like distant memories, replaced by a sense of purpose and belonging. The job at Carter Enterprises had grown into more than just work. It had become a second chance. The garage thrived under his guidance, with his skills and leadership earning him the respect of his colleagues. The same men who had once doubted him now sought his advice, their skepticism replaced by admiration. Marcus never gloated about their change in attitude. Instead, he saw it as a reminder that even the hardest hearts could be softened by understanding. Elliot continued to visit the garage after school, his fascination with mechanics growing with every passing day. Marcus taught him how to tinker with engines, patiently explaining the details and encouraging the boy's curiosity. Their bond deepened, with Marcus finding joy in mentoring someone so eager to learn. "You've got a knack for this, kid," he said one afternoon, as Elliot successfully replaced a car's spark plug. "Keep it up, and you might just put me out of a job someday." Elliot beamed at the compliment. "Only if you teach me everything you know first," he replied with a grin. Jonathan Carter's role in Marcus's transformation couldn't be overstated. The CEO's willingness to see beyond Marcus's circumstances and recognize his potential had been a turning point. Over dinners at the Carter household, Jonathan often spoke about the importance of giving people opportunities. "It's not charity," he said one evening. "It's about recognizing that everyone has something valuable to contribute if they're given the chance." Catherine, too, had become a steadfast supporter. Her work with local charities inspired Marcus to think about how he could give back to the community. With her encouragement, he began volunteering at a shelter, using his story to inspire others who were facing hardships. "I'm not here because I had all the answers," he told a group one evening. "I'm here because I didn't give up, and because there were people who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself." As time went on, Marcus found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this point. He thought about the cold nights on the park bench, the moments of doubt and despair that had once seemed insurmountable. But he also thought about the small victories, the first time Elliot smiled after the bullying incident, the applause after his presentation, the pride in Jonathan's eyes as he spoke about Marcus's contributions to the company. Each of those moments had been a step forward, a reminder that resilience wasn't about ignoring pain, but about finding strength in spite of it. Marcus often thought about his daughter Clara and the promise he had made to her. "You're stronger than you think, Dad," she had told him. Those words had carried him through his darkest days, and now they felt like a mantra he could share with others. One afternoon, Marcus received an unexpected call from Jonathan. "There's something I want to discuss," he said. "Can you come by the office?" Marcus arrived at Carter Enterprises, curious but not nervous. Jonathan greeted him warmly and led him into his office, where he handed Marcus a folder. "We've been thinking about expanding the garage program," Jonathan explained. "You've turned it into something extraordinary, and I want you to oversee the expansion. This would mean more responsibility and a well-deserved promotion." Marcus stared at the folder, the weight of the opportunity sinking in. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Jonathan smiled. "I've never been more sure of anything. You've earned this, Marcus. Your leadership has transformed the team, and your story has inspired more people than you realize. This isn't just a job, it's a chance to make an even bigger impact." The promotion wasn't just a professional milestone for Marcus. It was a validation of everything he had worked for. He accepted the offer with gratitude, vowing to use his new role to create opportunities for others, just as Jonathan had done for him. The expansion project became Marcus's passion. He worked tirelessly to establish training programs for aspiring mechanics, many of whom came from underprivileged backgrounds. He partnered with local schools and organizations, offering internships and workshops to students who needed a path forward. Elliot, of course, was a regular participant, eager to learn and help wherever he could. One day, as Marcus oversaw a workshop filled with bright-eyed students, he felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. These young people, who might have otherwise been overlooked, were now thriving in an environment that celebrated their potential. Marcus saw a reflection of himself in their determination, and it reminded him of how far he had come. At the end of the workshop, one of the students approached him. "Mr. Tanner," she said, her voice shy but sincere. "Thank you for believing in us. It means more than you know." Marcus smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "You don't need me to believe in you," he replied. "You just need to believe in yourself. The rest will follow." As the years went by, Marcus's life continued to flourish. The garage expansion was a success. His bond with the Carter family grew even stronger, and his work in the community touched countless lives. But through it all, Marcus remained humble, never forgetting the moments that had shaped him. One evening, as he sat on his porch watching the sunset, Elliot joined him. Now a teenager, the boy had grown into a confident and capable young man, thanks in no small part to Marcus's guidance. "Do you ever think about how everything started?" Elliot asked, his voice thoughtful. "All the time," Marcus said, a smile tugging at his lips. "Helping you that day was the best decision I ever made. You reminded me of who I was and who I could be." Elliot grinned. "And you reminded me that there's always someone willing to stand up for what's right." The two sat in comfortable silence, the sun dipping below the horizon. Marcus felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that his journey had come full circle. He had found his place in the world, not by running from his past, but by embracing it and using it to build a brighter future, for himself and for others. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, Marcus whispered to himself, "You're stronger than you think." And for the first time, he truly believed it. Marcus's journey reminds us all of the power of resilience, kindness, and second chances. His story isn't just about overcoming personal struggles. It's about how one small act of courage can ripple out to touch countless lives. It's about stepping up when it matters most, even when the odds are stacked against you. Think about your own life. Have there been moments when you felt unseen, doubted, or pushed to the sidelines? Or perhaps you've been in a position to help someone else who was struggling. What choices did you make in those moments? Did you stand up, speak out, or offer a hand? Like Marcus, we all have the capacity to create change, not just for ourselves, but for those around us. This story challenges us to reflect on the ways we can make a difference. It doesn't take wealth, power, or extraordinary circumstances to impact someone's life. Sometimes it's as simple as showing up, offering kindness, or believing in someone when they can't believe in themselves. These small actions can ignite hope and set someone on a path they never thought possible. Now, the question is, what will you do? Will you be the person who stands up for what's right even when it's uncomfortable? Will you reach out to someone who might need a helping hand, a word of encouragement, or simply someone to listen? Your actions, no matter how small they may seem, can have a profound impact. If Marcus's story resonated with you, take a moment to share it. Share it with someone who might be struggling to find their way. Share it with someone who might need a reminder of the power of hope and perseverance. And most importantly, let it remind you of your own strength. You are capable of greatness, not despite your challenges, but because of them. This isn't just about telling a story. It's about starting a movement of kindness, courage, and belief in one another. It's about building a world where no one feels invisible, and everyone has the opportunity to rise regardless of their circumstances. Today, let Marcus's journey inspire you to take action. Stand tall, speak your truth, and lift up those around you. Together, we can create a ripple effect of positivity and change, one small act at a time. Let's begin now. The power to make a difference is already in your hands.